Hello guys, I am back from another video on the David of deku. Was a super soldier. So in the last video deku, well, after Izuku was tackled, not really tackled, more like getting into a fight with Overhaul and his goons, well, Overhaul just sent in his goons to fight for him. Izuku defeated them obviously until he met his so-called, you know, um, successor. This successor was called the Reaper 2.0, even though it sounds pretty obvious, but he's still pretty powerful. He wielded a large scythe, but instead of like a regular blade at the end, instead it's basically a chainsaw. While they were fighting, Izuku defeated him by literally tricking him that, well, Overhaul was in trouble. So after killing him, or hurting him enough, Overhaul mercy killed him and now seeked revenge on Izuku and tried to kill him. But thanks to Nedry, she took the damage and getting a large scar on her face. I meant a scar on her face. After Izuku saw that, he goes enraged, gaining large fangs, and his hair starts growing longer. Like back when he was still called the Reaper, he acted like it, becoming a monster, acting like an animal in battle. But thankfully Overhaul escaped. Izuku sulked and wanted to get revenge but also felt sorry. Izuku said sorry to Nedry, saying that it was his fault for making her jump into battle. Saying that it was his fault for getting her that scar. But she didn't care. It's okay, she said. And it doesn't matter if she's, scarred now. She doesn't care anymore. She just wants to protect him. Izuku felt touched. As the rest of the, big three leave, except for Nedry, she kisses Izuku right on the lips as she says goodbye as she leaves. So, after she leaves, Izuku goes back to bed and goes to sleep. So that's basically what happened last episode. So, let's talk about what happens next. So, after Izuku wakes up, it's basically a normal day at school again. So when he gets there, it's just basically normal. After the day, almost after the day, they basically go into a simple training class for hero work, just training a little bit, using their quirks to just fight each other. But after that, when Izuku's about to leave, Aizawa tells him to go to the principal's office for something important. So, when Izuku gets there, they see several DUA staff, including Principal Nezu. Principal Nezu explains that they found the area where Overhaul is being held. Apparently, this spot is actually used to be an old war zone, specifically for the First Quirk War. And if you don't know what is the First Quirk War, it's basically a war between, quirk users back in the day. Back when the quirks were still, pretty few. After Izuku was told of this, Nezu says this. So, after we found out about this, apparently they've been getting these special parts for something. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be troubling. As he brings in the document, as Izuku checked it out, as Izuku was shocked. Because Izuku knows that type of technology. It's the same technology that gave him his robotic arm and legs. As Izuku just says this. That's no way. Is he trying to, as he says this, being Principal Nezu, yeah, we believe that he's trying to make more soldiers. And it doesn't seem to be, stopping. Many children have been missing for a while now. And I think that he's probably doing it. Izuku clenches his fist and says this. We should stop him now. As one of them being, wait for a second, Midnight says this. We should try and wait for a few more days. Don't worry, we have a plan. We just need to get some help from the military. As Izuku just says this. The military. As All Might says this. Yes. Apparently, the military also gotten concerns, especially because of the, materials that Overhaul's been getting. The materials were actually stolen, so they want to have some revenge. So, we're still filling out some paperwork, but don't worry, we'll save those children. As Izuku just says this. Thank you. As one of them being Aizawa says this. Alright, you're free to go, problem child. As Izuku just says this. Wait a minute, why did you call me problem child? As he says this. Isn't it obvious? As Izuku just says this. I can't tell if you're insulting me or complimenting me. As he says this. Either way, you should start leaving. So, Izuku leaves. As when Izuku was leaving, Izuku opens the door and sees several of his classmates. They followed them here. As one of the teachers, being Vlad King, says this. What are you doing here? As Kaminari says this. So, the leader of the Yakuza has been getting materials for, creating soldiers like you, Izuku? Oh god. As Kaminari, not Kaminari, I meant, Bakugo said this. I'm gonna kill him for making those things, including making more of you. As he starts creating explosions, as Nedry says this. We should try and stop him now. Why couldn't you? As All Might says this. I'm sorry, but you can't come. All of you. Only Izuku and the rest of the military are allowed to go there. As one of them, being Ida, says this. Why do you think that we are heroes? Heroes in training. We're supposed to be protecting the innocent lives of others. That's what heroes do. And us. Heroes in training will save them. Just like you people. So please, let us join this war. Please, just let us join this. We want to help Izuku and the rest of these children and stop the Yakuza no matter what. As one of them being... Wait for a second. Aizawa says this. I'm sorry, but we can't... As Principal Nezu stops him. As he says this. Fine. You're allowed to go there. As Aizawa just says this. But as he says this. Don't worry. Besides, they're after all well trained. As he smiles sadistically. As Izuku just says this. I have a bad feeling about this. So, a couple of days pass by as the paperwork has been finished. Now, the military is getting ready for their final assault at the Yakuza headquarters in that battlefield. So, after Izuku was told of this, Izuku starts wearing his hero costume as Eri says this. Are you going to be okay, Izuku? As Izuku just says this. Don't worry, Nedry. I'm gonna be okay. Just stay here. Izuku kind of laughs as she says this. Okay, brother. I'll wait for you. So, wait for a second. When Izuku starts walking up to the door, Izuku sees Nedry. Wait for a second again, wait. As Nedry says this. Now, Izuku, are you ready? As Izuku just says this. Ready as I'll ever be. As she says this. Good. Now, let this be our final fight against the Yakuza. And your so-called father. As Izuku just says this. You're right. As Izuku's parts start rattling. His mechanical parts. The ones that are given to him by his so-called father, Overhaul. And says this. With my parts, the ones that Overhaul gave me, I will use these parts to rip him apart, making him pay for what he did, turning all of these innocent children into monsters like me. But no more. I will save them. I will bring salvation to them, because I am no longer the Reaper. You can call me Thanatos, the god of peaceful death, the one who brings justice to this unforsaken world. As Nedry says this, Yishizuku, you actually sound like an edgelord. As Izuku just says this, either way, we should just start going. As Nedry says this, you're right, let's just start going. So, when they get there, they started leaving to the brand new, or at least the, wait for a second, the Yakuza headquarters at the broken down battlefield where the first Quirk War began. So, when they get there, several guards have been, well, walking around, watching it, with several animals experimented on to give them artificial quirks. As Izuku just says this. So, what we're gonna do, as All Might says this, what we always do, jump! As All Might jumps out of the helicopter and goes down to the ground and smashes some of the villains or, Yakuza members. As Izuku starts flying down by using his thrusters to basically repel him down, including the rest of the heroes. Like, for example, wait for a second. Ochako carrying Ida by using her quirk, levitation, not really anti-gravity I meant. Or for another example, Jiro by using her sound to basically just scream at the ground to basically repel her from, falling to her death. Or for another example, Kaminari, he starts creating electricity to basically kind of float. So, when they get there, they see several Yakuza members as they start using their guns to start shooting at them. Izuku starts using his lance to start slashing them apart by just stabbing them, ripping them apart. As Izuku looks over and sees the Yakuza building, which is basically like a rundown, hospital. So, when they get there, the rest of the heroes start, saying that they're going to be fighting off the rest of these Yakuza members, while the heroes in training are going to be, going into the cells and recapturing these children and bringing them back. So, after they get there, they see several, you know, rooms basically, which they are modified to become cells for mostly children. So Overhaul and his doctors, or well abductors, I meant, for experimenting. So after Izuku rips off the doors of these hospital rooms, which are turned into cells, Izuku gets the children and brings them to the outside. Getting them and start throwing them, not really throwing, more like throwing himself out of the window and bringing them to the chopper, as in helicopter, and bringing them there. So, while they were doing that, several of the other heroes in training started fighting off these villains by using their quirks. Like, for example, Bakugo just exploding them, or Todoroki just using his ice and fire powers. So, while they were getting all of these children out, they see Overhaul himself. As when Izuku looks, he's different. He modified his body, giving him several arms, specifically 10. 10 arms. These arms were mechanical, including his legs. His legs were almost like like an animal's legs, specifically like a deer's. His legs seem to have thrusters similar to Izuku's, but more powerful. As Izuku just says this, "What did you do to yourself, Overhaul?" As he says this, after several of the experiments, especially copying your design, I finally made myself even more pure. I am now a god. I am now able to become as powerful as the number one villain and the number one hero. You don't call me Overhaul anymore. You can call me the Omega and the Alpha. The beginning And the end. As he starts shooting out missiles, these missiles were actually made out of his bone. His bones, specifically, are now able to shoot out like missiles. And when they fire out, they basically explode in like a fury of like fire and maybe earth. So, when they get when they get shot by the not bullets, I meant the missiles, they come out of the window as Izuku says this. God damn, he's strong. As he says this. Come on, son. Let's play. After all, I am your father. As Izuku just says this. You're crazy. As he says this. I'm crazy. You're the crazy one. You're working with these stupid heroes instead of with your old man. Now, pay, pay, pay. So wait first. So Izuku gets his gun, which is modified now to now use its fully lethal form, the most powerful, like the most pure form of his Hysteria's quirk. When Izuku shoots it at him, it starts getting reflected, just bouncing off him. As Izuku just says this. What in the? As he says this, do you like that? Thanks to my quirk overhaul, I am now basically immune to all damage. The metal that was used is now integrated into my body. It's now a part of my flesh, a part of me. Now, my son, let's have some fun. As he grabs Izuku by the head and starts getting ready to crush it, as Izuku just says this. Damn it! As Overhaul says this. Now, any last words? Not really last words. It's more like the last words when you're about to, die and be reborn. Be. Becoming your old self, the Reaper. Now, any last words then? As Izuku just says this. I only have frickin' one. As Izuku says this. Wait for a second. Bakugo, now! As Bakugo starts charging towards behind Overhaul, and Bakugo burns or explodes his back, revealing his weak point. His weak point is his back, which is exposed. As Overhaul says this. Oh yeah, that. The doctor said that I had to open up my back. Apparently, the actual quirk that I was given, the artificial one, means to have my back opened, showing the spine. What do you think, Izuku? As Izuku just says this. You freak. As Izuku shoots his gun at the weak point, as it buries into his skin and flesh, and now tendons and now bone, and into his heart. As Overhaul feels that he says this, it won't hurt me. Besides, thanks to the brand new quirk that I was given, it will just dissolve. As Izuku just says this. That's the point. As he says this. That's the what? As he feels immense pain in his heart, feeling like he's actually having a heart attack. As he says this. What is this? As Izuku just says this. My Asterius quirk is now able to be dissolved in any type of liquid. When it does, it turns into a potent poison. Now, any last words, Overhaul? As he says this. You could go to hell, Izuku. I no longer consider you as an eligible leader for the Yakuza. And besides, the Yakuza is toast. Either way, see ya, son. As Izuku shoots him in the head, killing him. Now, Overhaul is dead. As for the rest of the Yakuza, they were brought to jail and brought to Tartarus. So, after that day, after that horrible, horrible day, they came back free. They came back with like a chip off their shoulder. Izuku felt happy when he finally killed Overhaul. But Izuku feels also empty. But he doesn't care. Izuku finally killed Overhaul. It was his life's dream to finally kill him. To finally get his revenge. So, after that day, they celebrated. Several people arrived at UA as they celebrated the defeat of the Yakuza. But they're still worried about the League of Villains, which unfortunately they decided to, well, stay in hiding from now on. Wait for a second. So, while Izuku's at the party, Izuku meets up with Nedry and her parents. As Nedry's dad says this. It's nice to meet... sorry about that, wait for a second. It's nice to meet you. You can call me Nedry's dad, but you can just call me Horikoshi. As Izuku just says this. Hello, Horikoshi. As the other one says this, being Nedry's mom. Nice to meet you. You can call me Sakura. As Izuku just says this. Nice to meet you. As Horikoshi says this. So, you're the, well, kid that my daughters keeps talking about. So, what is your relationship? What is your relationship with my daughter? As she says this, being Nedry. Well, we're actually kind of in love. As her dad says this. Really? Now, can I please talk to Izuku in private? As she says this. Alright, me and Mama are just going to celebrate over there. So, Izuku was brought to a pretty quiet room. As Nedry's dad says this. Says this. So, if you are, well, if my daughter likes you, then I won't hurt you. But, if you ever wrong her or hurt my little princess, I will kill you. Got it? As Izuku just says this, I promise, Mr. Nedry's dad, or Horikoshi, as he says this. Very good. Now, anyway, wait for a second, guys. Wait, Dravian, wait. Sorry about that, it was just a glitch. Sorry. So, after he said that, Izuku just says this. Don't worry, I won't hurt your daughter. After all, I kind of feel the same way. As he says this. Very well. Also, if you're ever going to, well, have fun with my daughter, make sure to wear a rubber. And please don't, do it all night. As Izuku starts blushing and says this, I won't do that. Besides, as he says this, oh yeah, your prosthetic legs, I wanted to also ask. Do you still have a dong? As Izuku just says this. Obviously, what did you think? Like, I don't have a dong or anything? I don't even pee. As he says this. Wait, you pee? Huh. Anyway, just make sure to not hurt my daughter in any way. Or you're gonna be having these hands. As he says this. Okay, Mr. Nedry's dad. So, after talking, and also after a bit of partying, Izuku goes back to Nedry as they decide to go back to their dorm. Or specifically, to Nedry's dorm. So, Izuku was never in a girl's room before, as Nedry says this. So, Izuku, I wanted to ask, as Izuku just says this. What is it, Nedry? As Izuku was pushed onto the bed, as She goes onto the bed, being Nejiri, as she says this. Ever had fun before? As Izuku just says this. What do you mean by that? As she kisses Izuku on the lips. As she says this. Because we're gonna be having fun tonight. She smiles as Izuku gets ready for tonight. So, when Izuku wakes up, he's in a delirious state. Izuku sees all of his clothes basically strewn out all over the bed as he's naked, with Nejiri also naked, except for her, well, you know what it is. As Izuku just says this. So, I actually did it with her. So, after getting his prosthetics back onto his body, Izuku leaves her and makes breakfast for her, putting it on her, well, table. Putting a note saying, "Good morning, sweetheart," written on the, well, note, as Izuku leaves. So, this is basically going to be the end of this series. So, let's talk about the epilogue. So, in the epilogue, Izuku is basically now a hero, but more specifically, Izuku is technically the number 2 hero because Izuku decides to make Nejiri the number 1 hero. Even though he's the number 2 hero, he mostly stays in the military and just, acts as a sort of like, well, general kind of. Nejiri and Izuku gets 2 children. One with a similar quirk to Izuku, or more like artificial quirk, because now, thanks to his quirk being now super developed, it's now a part of him, now able to be formed into an actual quirk when he gets a son or daughter. This son now has a similar quirk to Izuku, while the daughter has a similar quirk to Nejiri. She specifically has a special type of ability, this girl. She's able to manifest parts similar to Izuku's mechanical, almost prosthetic arms and legs. So, Izuku is now one of the best generals out there. One of the best. Currently one of the top 10, specifically the number 1 best general in in the entire world basically. Because of his charisma and his, well, brutal nature in the battlefield. Considered as the, well, god of death in his, well, part of the military, or his branch. So, now Izuku is considered a hero among any other hero. For Nejiri, she now works as a teacher at UA, but not only that, she's now basically a mentor to Izuku's little sister, being Eri. Eri is now a part of the brand new version, or at least the brand new generation of the Big Three. She's currently one of the best, apparently. So, after those days, they basically acted like a couple, being Izuku and Nejiri, and they lived out their lives in happiness. So, this is basically the end of this series, and I hope you liked the video. Comment and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye!